Dragons Dogma 2 is one of the best open world RPGs I've played in recent years. There, I've said it, and that's why in today's video we are going for the absolute missable nightmare of a platinum trophy. And yes, I mean missable nightmare, as almost every trophy outside of a few story specific ones are technically missable. Now, although they are nearly all technically missable, they're actually relatively easy to obtain, and if you're like me and pretty much got 100% completion, and I do mean 100% completion as I did pretty much everything including every single side quest. Actually, that's a lie, it's more like 99%, as the only thing I didn't really do is get all of the Seekers tokens, but I did literally everything else, so cut me some slack there. Anyway, we've got a long one today, so with that, let's get into the video. We begin the game with a cutscene where the people of Vermund are celebrating the coronation of a new sovereign, presumably us, the Arisen, as we never see his face and are instead chucked into first person. Everyone's vibing, having a good time, and we take our place on the throne. All of a sudden though, the party was completely ruined as the room turns dark, everyone freezes in place, and we are spoken to by some mysterious voice. And it tells us that if we want to witness the world in its true aspect, then we must demonstrate our will and alter the course of the rivers of fate. We have no idea what this means, other than the fact that it is clear the cycle has once again begun, and we pass out. We then find ourselves as a prisoner at an excavation site, and where we finally get to see the Arisen's face, as now it is time to create our character. Now, I hate to admit this, but I spent hours on the character creation demo crafting characters that I may want to use, and in the end decided to make myself look like Talion from Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Got to admit, looking at him now though, he looks more like a mix of Prince Charming from Shrek and Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, but nevertheless, we made a handsome son of a gun, and so we move. We then get led outside where we find out that this excavation site's prisoners are actually pawns, and seen as we seem to have been mistaken as one, we are sent to work. We also meet up with a pawn called Rook, who I'm pretty sure is from the first game, and he basically just shows us some of the ropes. We didn't get a hell of a lot of work actually done though. We literally moved one block before, I shit you not, a Medusa decided to attack the site, and so we and the other pawns proceed to open up a can of whoop-ass on this girl, and it turns out this was more whoop-ass than she could handle, as she decides to just get the hell out of there. After dealing with the Medusa, we then get spoken to by a weird shadow man who notices we must have lost our memories, but that we will be fine as long as we believe in our destiny as the Arisen, and then tells us that we better make an escape. So me and Rook then find ourselves running from the Overseer and the guards, and end up jumping off of a cliff to our death because they'll never take us alive. No, I'm kidding, we landed on a conveniently placed griffin and rode on his back like Harry rode Buckbeak. We then get shown the game's title screen with some absolutely amazing views before we see our griffin get shot out of the sky because air travel hadn't been invented yet and the soldiers were jealous. After crash landing, we find our boy Rook had landed in the water, which wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't for the creature known as the brine that infests it wasn't eating him alive. But he's a pawn, so technically he can't die, and he seemed pretty chill about the whole situation anyway, so you know what? Fair enough. We then get approached by some guards and they tell us to come with them back to their camp so they can find out 1, what the hell we were doing riding a griffin, and 2, so that they can patch up our wounds, and so we agree to follow them, unlocking our first trophy of the game for getting our first taste of freedom. On our way to the encampment, we end up running into some goblins, but the only thing they were gobbling was the sword I plunged into their face, and eventually we make it to the camp where we are greeted by a group of pawns, immediately making the guards think we could in fact be the Arisen. The pawns then show us towards a rift stone, and we use it to summon our main pawn. Once again, I will refer back to what I said a few minutes ago about spending way too long creating characters, because it wasn't just Arisens I was making, it was pawns too, and eventually decided I was going to go with Morrigan from Dragon Age. Again, not a perfect recreation, but you know what, who cares, she's bloody gorgeous. And from here we then get told we should make our way over to Melve to witness the dragon's destruction, but before we do that we rested up, hired 2 more pawns to come with us on our journey, one which was one of my friend's pawns that was over level 70 and would literally carry me through so many fights throughout a good portion of the game. Yes, it's cheating, No, I don't care. I also took on a few side quests purely for some XP and other rewards. Now there are a total of 59 side quests in this game, and I'm going to be honest, I did every single one of those bad boys. Didn't even need to, as there's only a handful that we actually needed to do for trophies, but I truly wanted to experience everything this game had to offer, and I will say a lot of the side quests you can take on are actually really damn enjoyable, and they all feel like they were properly thought out, not just put together quickly and chucked in for extra content. And also Also, completing certain quest lines also helps us out later on in the end game, so it was worth it regardless. Because I did every single one of them, I'm not going to talk too much about doing them and what I had to do because we would literally be here for hours. I will mention a few, especially if there's trophies tied to them, but apart from that, it's mainly just going to be the main story we focus on. Anyway, now it was time to head to Melve, but of course I decided to take this time to also do a little bit of exploring. After all, we were wearing nothing but rags and I wanted to find myself some clothes. Now, something I want to mention regarding the game's combat is the health bar. You see, every time you take damage, you lose health, and of course you can recover it, but only up to a certain amount and hardly ever the full gauge. And that's because also each time you take damage, you temporarily lose portions of your health bar that can only be recovered by dying and using a wake stone to revive yourself, or by resting at an inn or camp. This means that you do have to play it safe sometimes, and rushing into a group of enemies isn't necessarily the smartest thing to do. Well, of course I didn't pay any attention to my health bar as it's the beginning of the game, so surely the enemies can't be that strong, right? Oh, I was so wrong. And so it was at this point I decided to say screw it to exploring for the time being, as I wanted to get stronger, and so I just headed straight to Melve. Along the way, finding some camping gear and actually unlocking another trophy for camping out in the wild for the first time. We then make it to Melve, where we see the destruction that the dragon attack had caused, and also end up having some PTSD flashbacks of the dragon attacking. You see, we were there when the dragon attacked, and of course we thought we could take it on, but alas that wasn't the case, and we just got charged more than your dad's sausages on the barbecue. But we did get another story related trophy for regaining our memories. We also see the dragon literally use his claw to rip our heart out, and he did it with such precision he could literally be a surgeon. Then again, maybe not, because he did decide to eat it afterwards. Also, this dragon people are calling Grigori, which is the dragon from the first game, although there is no solid evidence to prove that this is Grigori, so I'm just going to be referring to him as Dragon, or Bad Boy Dragon, or Big Boy Dragon, purely because I don't want the comments saying, oh, that's not Grigori, that's a different dragon, or that is Grigori, blah blah blah. Yeah, he's just a dragon, alright? He's a dragon and he took our heart. Now, even though he did take our heart, we do survive, as it turns out the dragon had marked us as the Arisen. Essentially, he chose the man he wants to kill him later, which is pretty crazy if you think about it, but hey, at least he knows what he's up against. We then wake up from our flashback in the care of Ulrika, a woman who had looked after us previously when we fought against the dragon before we were taken to the castle. Even though she definitely has the hots for us, and don't worry, we will be giving it to her later, we unfortunately had a kingdom to rule and a dragon to slay, and so we took our leave. Outside, we are then approached by some guards who tell us that they had received reports of a man claiming to be Arisen, and so had come to find us to escort us to the capital, although there is apparently an Arisen already sitting on the throne, so this does leave them a little bit baffled. Before leaving for the capital though, we first headed to the local inn to speak to a man called Lennart, who explains what vocations are. Now let me break it down for you. Vocations are essentially classes, and at this moment in time we have 4 to choose from. Fighter, which is sword and shield based combat; Archer, which honestly the name speaks for itself; Thief, which focuses on using dual daggers and quick moves; and Mage, which again speaks for itself, although while a mage can use all types of magic, it excels at healing and protective spells. Obviously each class can only use class specific weapons, but this also applies to armor. Like, I can't run around with a sword and shield while wearing some magic robes. However, there is a vocation we can get much closer towards the end of the game that does allow us to do this, and there are also trophies related to all these vocations, but we will talk about those later as the time comes. We also earn discipline each time we kill an enemy, which we can use to buy different skills and abilities for each of the classes to assist us in combat, which are again class specific, but there are augments which we can also purchase for each class, which then can be used on any class. It sounds like a bit of a complicated system, but trust me, it's not. It's very simple. Anyway, we've now spent like 2 minutes talking about vocation, so enough of that. We took on a couple of side quests in Melve and then met up with the soldiers where we left for our travel to Vernworth. The roads there was literally full of danger, like non-stop goblins and harpies to deal with. I didn't mind because this was all getting me XP, discipline and items, but later on, I can't lie, it became more of a nuisance having to stop like every 30 seconds to fight a group of enemies. We even had to fight a massive cyclops that, I can't lie, looked a hell of a lot like your mum, but she went down pretty easy. Doing all this though did in a way lend some truth to our claims as Arisen, and the soldiers even gave us a document that we could use to enter the capital if we chose to then make our own way there, but they were offering a lift on an oxcart, so I decided to stick with them. We eventually make it to the capital and get put into the interrogation room with the captain of the guard named Brandt, but thankfully he didn't want to interrogate us. Instead, he actually knew that the man sitting on the throne wasn't an Arisen. You see, once we had become Arisen, word was sent to the palace. Queen Regent Disa, though, wasn't prepared to give up her power and instead wanted her son to sit on the throne to continue to rule when the time was right. So while we were recovering from being torched, she had us abducted and sold as a slave to the Battahl excavation site, as well as had a curse placed upon us so that we would lose all of our memory of being an Arisen, and then instead had hired someone to play the part as the Arisen until a later point as to not draw suspicion. Brandt tells us that he is going to help us retake the throne though, and that we are to meet him at the tavern later that night, truly beginning the main quest line and unlocking another story related trophy. While I waited for the evening to come, I then took my time to explore the city. During this time, we met a boy named Sven who was currently trying to evade the guards and who we later find out is actually Disa's son. We took on a few side quests and we also collected a hell of a lot of gear, including my very first Seeker's token. Seeker's tokens, for the most part, aren't extremely important. They are simply exchanged for items at one of the merchants. However, there are two trophies tied to them. One of them which involves us finding solutions for riddles given to us by a Sphinx, and one of these riddles involves us heading back to the location where we found our very first Seeker's token to pick up the new item that was placed there and return it to her, all while having just 7 in-game days to do so. Sounds like a lot, but trust me, it isn't. So my advice for anyone playing through the game, as soon as you find your first Seeker's token, open up your map and take a screenshot, as it will save you a potential massive headache later. And the other trophy requires us to collect 80 out of the 240 scattered around the map. I mean, I am mega thankful we don't have to collect all of them, but this process still took me a good couple hours to do. Anyway, continuing on with the main story, Brandt tells us that the perfect opportunity for us to prove that we are the Arisen is at the upcoming Coronation. However, only certain nobles and citizens who have continued to provide for the good of Vernworth would be allowed to attend. I think you know where this is going. Yes, we now have to take on a number of different quests for him. We don't even have to do all of them, just enough to prove ourselves, but again, I wanted to complete everything, so I decided to do them all anyway. So the first quest on our list of quests to do for Brandt had us going around to 3 different locations to help out some soldiers clear the areas of monsters. Yep, nothing actually story related here, so nothing really to talk about. It was literally just us killing monsters. But we did unlock a few more trophies while doing this quest and some side quests along the way. We unlocked the 1 speed only trophy for using an oxcart for the very first time. We got the just a stone's throw away trophy for using a fairy stone for the first time to fast travel to one of the few port crystals around the map. The a house in this economy trophy for looking after a woman's house for a week and then buying it off of her, and the re-griffining trophy for taking flight on a griffin for the second time, which genuinely I didn't even know was a trophy at this point in time. I was just trying to kill the damn thing. Spoiler alert, I didn't kill it because I ended up getting thrown off, but an absolute legend of a pawn named Damien saved me. Oh, I'm gonna fall. I've got like no energy, and yep, and this is me dead. Oh shit, Damien, you legend! How did you do that? You was on it with me. How did you save me? Oh my god. The next quest for Brandt we took on had us infiltrating the palace, and I say infiltrating very loosely, as long as we entered through one of the side doors to the palace, no one inside seemed to even question why we was there. Once inside though, we made our way up to the Queen's office where we find a torn letter with the Battahl insignia on it, and at this current moment in time, Vermund was not on the best of terms with Battahl, so while it proves nothing, it does point towards her schemes running a little bit deeper than we initially thought. We also get approached by Sven, who actually knew his mother was up to no good and agrees to help us in investigating further. And for our third and what I thought was final quest for Brandt, we had to sneak inside of the Vernworth jail and free one of the magistrates that the Queen had imprisoned because he knew of her schemes and didn't want to play along. At first he didn't even want to leave, but that was until I ended up discovering a hidden underground library with one of the kids in the city. I promise that isn't what it sounds like. I don't make a habit of hanging around kids, but because this place had loads of books, he all of a sudden couldn't wait to leave the jail. Now again, I thought they were the only only quests I had to do for Brandt, as they were the only ones he gave me at the time, but apparently he had more for us to do, so once again we move on to the next quest. This had us investigating a hidden village on the outskirts of Vermund that Queen Disa had started to regularly purchase crown flowers from. Now you could say, maybe she just took a fancy to the flowers, and you could be right, but what makes it shady is that this only started happening the day that Arthur, the now false Arisen, had appeared on the scene. So we headed over there to see what information we could turn up, and while making our way over there, I actually can't believe I'm about to say this, but I used your mum as a bridge. No, seriously, she broke the bridge, fell between the gap, and let me walk all over her to get to the other side, unlocking the trophy Cyclops Abridged. Okay, I promise, I'll stop with the calling your mum a Cyclops now, it's not very nice. She's more like a troll anyway. We eventually make it to the hidden village, and everyone here seems to be a little bit shady, almost as if we shouldn't be there, but we came to investigate, and investigate we shall. We ask a few people if they know anything of a man named Arthur, but everyone just says they've never even heard of him. We also meet a man named Flawed, and he tells us that the villagers acting strange were because we was being watched and evaluated. You see, this village is where thieves come to learn and train, and in the end acquire their meister's teachings, and so far we have proven ourselves worthy. He also tells us that they have a network of spies and even has information on Disa's plans, but because of their village code, they refuse to tell me as they can't align themselves with any one particular power. Oh, and he doesn't know of a man called Arthur either, but he does give us his Thief Meister skill, one of the many Meister skills we need to collect for a trophy later on, although there are actually 2 Thief Meister skills and this one is the fake one. While it does give us a unique skill for the Thief vocation, he is not the true Thief Meister. That man we have yet to find, but not to worry, as that actually comes sooner rather than later. We end up investigating the town some more and end up stumbling across an underground jumping course where at the end we actually find that the whole town is waiting for us there, as well as the true Thief Meister Shrael, and thankfully he is able to answer our questions. Now while he doesn't say why the Queen is all of a sudden buying crown flowers from them, he does tell us that Arthur's real name is Dara and that he was actually next in line to become the Thief Meister. However, he ended up taking a fall during the trials, which left him with a scar on his chest that he then used to pose as the Arisen, and because of that, the role of Thief Meister fell to Shrael and they exiled him from ever returning to the village. He then gives us a bill of arrest for Dara and also gives us the true Thief Meister skill. We then return to Brandt and hand him the bill of arrest, and while he can't outright arrest him as it doesn't really prove anything, it can be used to invite suspicion amongst the people of Vernworth. Our next quest had us investigating Magistrate Allard's quarters in the palace after Sven found out that he had been sending and receiving packages that he'd been keeping secret, and so now our job was to find out what was going on with that. We end up finding another Battahl crested letter to the Queen that says that they have gave her the power of something known as the godsway and that they want her to secure Melve as soon as she can. Not entirely sure what this means, but this does mean we have to investigate it. But that will come a little bit later, as now we have a masquerade to investigate to find the false Arisen. While escaping the palace, we also run into a woman of the night who works at a local cat house named Wilhelmina. I mean, at this point games just aren't fair. The Witcher gives us Yennefer, Cyberpunk gives us Panam, and now Dragons Dogma gives us this absolute bombshell. Too bad she's a prosy. Anyway, she helps us avoid getting caught by the guards and we make an exit. We then get changed into our finest masquerade gear and attend the shindig, earning another trophy, Noble's Night Out. At the event, nothing really happens. We do speak to a man that seems to recognise us and a few people have a little dance, but apart from that, it's actually a pretty dead experience. We end up finding out though that Arthur, or Dara, whatever his name is, actually made an exit, and we end up finding a secret door at the back of the hall that takes us to the local halfway house, earning us another trophy, Mermicolian Delights, yep, whatever this is. We got that trophy. Once here, we end up running into Wilhelmina again, and once again, she helps us from getting spotted by the guards. She then shows us that she has a little peephole that she can use to look into one of the rooms next to hers, and inside we see the false Arisen having a good time with the ladies. That was until Disa comes in and tells him off for being drunk. We also see the man who recognised us earlier, and Disa refers to him as Lord Faceless. But just as things were about to get juicy, Wilhelmina tells us that we need to go before the guards eventually catch on. Anyway, at this point, Brandt then tells us it's time to attend the coronation, however makes a point of saying that once we attend, everything will change, and to me this indicated a point of no return. So I chose to put the main quest on hold and to now go around the entire upper portion of the map, completing every side quest I currently had access to and acquiring all vocations and their Meister's skills that I could get my hands on. So we ended up going back to Melve to investigate what the letter was talking about when we noticed that a dragon was attacking the village. Of course, we helped defend the village from said dragon, and and it was a pretty long fight, one that I didn't even technically win because the dragon flew away. We also noticed that there was a man named Sigurd helping out in the fight that seemed to use a bladed staff and magic in combat. Talking to him reveals that it is actually a custom vocation he had made up, and because of our help in dealing with the dragon, he agrees to teach us the mystic spearhand vocation, one of my favourite vocations in the game. He does also have a Meister skill, but we are unable to get our hands on that just yet, as we need to help him with something a little bit later on when we reach Battahl. Also, because we helped the town, Lennart agrees to teach us his Meister's skill for the fighter vocation. We also found ourselves helping an elf get better at archery, which ended up in us travelling to his elven home of Sacred Arbor, where we then helped him and his father save his sister, and that gave us access to the archery Meister skill. What was kind of cool about this place though is that if you don't have a pawn with you that can speak Elven, then you can't actually understand what any of the other elves are saying, as only him and his sister actually speak English. We also helped a Beastren stationed up at the first camp in the game train up another fighter, although we wasn't doing this for the vocation, as we did a little side quest earlier for that already. Like with the Mystic Spearhand, we don't get his Meister skill just yet, as he ends up losing his placement due to a Cyclops attacking the camp, and so we need to meet him in Battahl later, where he'll then give us the skill. And finally, we helped a mage and a very young girl who wanted to be a sorceress get their hands on some grimoires. Because they wanted the same ones though, we did have to have some forgeries made, and it was essential to give those forgeries to the mage, mainly because he's a dick, but also because he won't question that they are actually forgeries, and he'll still give us the mage Meister skill. The young girl on the other hand gets the real grimoires, which then causes her to absolutely lose control, and she starts attacking us and her grandma. As long as we don't deal any damage to her though, she will eventually pass out, and visiting her shortly after rewards us with her sorcerer Meister skill, and her gran also gives us another sorcerer Meister skill. But yeah, they're all the vocations and Meister skills that we can get in the top portion of the map. While going for the skills and the vocations, like I said, I also took on every other single side quest I currently had access to, and in the process managed to unlock a few more trophies. We unlocked the Affinity and Beyond trophy for raising a person's affinity to us to the maximum, which we earned while completing Ulrika's questline. We unlocked both the Versatile trophy for changing our vocation for the first time, and the Duo Destinies trophy for changing our vocation to Mystic Spearhand, and we unlocked the Specialist trophy for reaching maximum rank in one of our vocations. So now, with a bunch of side quests and a few more trophies out of the way, it was time to continue on with the main story. So me, Brandt and our main pawn attend the coronation to call out the false Arisen and Queen Disa. However, on our way up to the palace, our pawn Morrigan all of a sudden tells us that we can't go any further, as she starts hearing a voice that almost forces her to obey its command. Brandt concludes that this must have something to do with the so-called godsway, and so instead we return to the tavern. Turns out it was in fact the godsway, as our pawn was not the only one being controlled. Now, a couple of days before the main quest, I did happen to capture a stalker that was following me around town. He was hired to keep an eye on us, and Brandt managed to get some information from him. Information that could potentially explain the godsway and where it was made, and that place would be Battahl. We get a border crossing permit from Brandt, and he tells us that the stalker also mentioned of an oracle that not only foretold the Arisen's coming, but also told him where he could find us, and that she may also be worth a visit while we are there. So we quickly finish up a couple more side quests, one involving Sven and one involving Wilhelmina, which actually had us helping her with the assassination of the magistrate, and as a reward, your boy got to smash. But now, with a pep in our step, it was time to make for Battahl and cross the border. While I do have the border entry permit, I decided to knock out 2 trophies at the same time here, one for crossing the border and one for actually sneaking into Battahl using illegal methods. There's 2 ways to do this: take some extremely dangerous route full of monsters, or take an oxcart that for some reason spawns near Checkpoint Rest Town. While this isn't like a normal oxcart and we can't pay to use it, we can still hide inside of it and use that to go through the border's gates. This was an incredibly long but short journey at the same time. However, when we actually got to the gates, we end up watching a cutscene where we see Lord Faces using the very same oxcart to pass through the border. At this point, I thought it was messed up and I'd have to try and get this trophy again later, but to my surprise, I turned around to find the oxcart still there, so I hopped on board, crossed through the gates to Battahl, and earned 2 trophies: across the border for passing through the gates for the first time, and the I'm in trophy for using illicit means to pass through the gates. At this point, it was getting pretty late, so I ended up coming off for the night to continue with the game the next day, but when I loaded it back up, I found myself back behind the border in in Checkpoint Rest Town, and seeing as I now had the 2 trophies tied to crossing the border, I can now pass through the gates the legal way, and this means the guard won't be chasing me down if they see me. This allowed me to 1, finally pick up the Warrior Meister skill from the B stream we helped earlier that was actually located right next to the checkpoint, and 2, pick up a side quest involving some bandits. Not going to talk much about the side quest other than the fact that while going through it, 2 of my pawns got killed right next to each other, and reviving both of them at the same time got me the trophy, Quit Playing Dead. Heading into the main city though, we are once again greeted by the strange man from the beginning who we now know is called the Pathfinder. He tells us that all of the knowledge in regards to the godsway comes from the Forbidden Magic Research Lab here in the city, and that our best bet to learn more would be to head to the nearby coast and speak to a man named Ambrosius, as he is actually the lead researcher of the lab. Of course, before we do that, we put a halt to the main quest line and once again get every single available side quest in Battahl completed, as well as some new side quests now available in Vernworth. And of course finish collecting the rest of the vocations and Meister skills. And while doing those, I did pretty much clean up the rest of the game's trophies, excluding story related trophies and ending related trophies. So our first trophy actually involved us heading towards the south of Battahl up towards Dragon's Breath Tower, which nabbed us the trophy Roost of the Dragon. And at this tower we also ran into Sigurd, the man who taught us the Mystic Spearhand vocation earlier, and he was here to finally put an end to the dragon that attacked Melve. We agreed to help, and after a pretty brutal fight against the dragon, we eventually managed to take it down, completing Sigurd's questline and nabbing the Mystic Spearhand Meister skill. I then travelled to the north of Battahl and met with the Oracle Brandt had mentioned earlier, and while I personally don't feel like she gave any useful information, I did find out that we was actually speaking to an illusion of her and that she was actually hiding on the roof, but finding her did manage to not only give us access to the Trickster vocation, but it also gave us the Trickster Meister skill. I then travelled back to Vernworth to take on a couple of new side quests, one of which involves us investigating something known as the Phantom Oxcart that only appears at night. We end up finding out that a guard in Vernworth was paid to round up pawns and take them to the Oxcart for them to be taken somewhere else, and it was up to us to find out where. So we got naked, and this meant the driver of the Oxcart thought we were a pawn and so allowed us to hop on board, earning us the trophy, Are We There Yet? And because I started talking about the quest, I'll finish. Basically, we end up heading to the Battahl border where we get given a beating and can't retaliate, and are then taken to some large magical door near the city of Battahl where our cover is somehow blown and we have to kill all the guards. We did get some information though and learned that beyond that point the pawns are taken to some ruins and forced to work thanks to the power of a staff that acts almost as a kind of godsway. These ruins are probably the same ones we were at the start of the game, but yeah, after taking this information back to Brandt, that pretty much ends the quest. Next I decided to seek out the Sphinx and play her game of wits where we have to find solutions to a number of riddles, and on the way an enemy actually jumped onto my back and stole an item from me, but killing this same enemy before he gets a chance to escape and taking back our item nabs the trophy. To the victor goes the spoils. We meet up with the Sphinx, who I can't lie is actually a creepy looking motherfudger, and instead of fighting us, she gives us the chance to impress her by solving a number of riddles, and with each one we solve, we are rewarded. The first riddle had us going into some nearby ruins and bringing her the item of highest value inside, which was actually found right above the entrance to the ruins, and this was the ceiling file that basically allows us to trap anyone we want inside of it, and turning it into her not only nabs us a reward, but she also lets us keep it, which is pretty damn cool, even though I never used it. The next riddle had us bring her the person who has the highest affinity with us. Now I'm sure I could have brought Ulrika or Wilhelmina, as I had romanced the both of them, so I assume that they would have had the highest affinity with me, but an easier way is to just bring her your main pawn to solve this riddle pretty much straight away, seeing as your pawn is almost always with you. The next riddle involved the Seeker's tokens, and like I mentioned earlier, we had to go back to where we found our very first one, so we went back, picked up the new item and returned it to her, solving that riddle. The next riddle had us give her an item considered to be our most treasured. Now this can actually be absolutely any item. You could give her an apple if you wanted to and you'd complete it, but I gave her a port crystal as there's only a limited number of them in the game, and in return she actually duplicates it for us. And for the final riddle in this area, she tells us that she is looking for her parents, which seems hella confusing, like how you're supposed to bring her one of her parents. Well, it turns out all you actually need to do is hire a pawn with the name of either Sphinx mother, Sphinx father or Sphinx parent to solve the riddle. After solving the fifth riddle though, the Sphinx then moves to a new location, which just so happens to be in that extremely dangerous path that you can take to get into Battahl. And so after fighting my way through the absolute horrors that awaited me there, I found the Sphinx again, completing the 6th riddle, which was literally just finding her. Our 7th riddle involved us having to fight someone in front of her and win, but the catch is we are equipped with a ring that means we do little to no damage. Thankfully though, a good old shield bash knocked him to the floor, and then I picked him up and chucked him off of the edge of the cliff, solving that riddle. Our next riddle was a bit iffy, and this is where a PS Plus backup save will really come in clutch. The Sphinx tells us that she wants us to bring her a man, but the thing is we don't know his name and he has a twin. Both of these individuals can be found near the Battahl border, and if you actually speak to them you find out that their names are Dante and Virgil, which is a nice little nod to Devil May Cry. The key to working out which one you're looking for though is their hair. While only slightly different, one of them has slightly straighter hair than the other. Luckily I managed to find the correct man and ferrystone back to the Sphinx first time around, but again that backup save was well and truly needed, because if I didn't make that backup and I didn't get the correct one, I would have been locked out from completing the quest line and thus locked out of the trophy at the end. The 9th riddle just had us placing statues on a pedestal that equaled the amount of riddles that we had already answered. Now even though this is my 9th riddle, I've only actually answered 8 at this point in time, so I put 8 statues on the pedestal and she rewarded us with the unmaking arrow. An arrow that will instantly kill whatever it is that it's shot at, however will cause the game to save instantly after the arrow is shot, so when we use it we either have to make sure we have a backup save before we use it, or we just have to make it count, which we should be using on the Sphinx very shortly. I then solved the 10th and final riddle, in which she wanted us to bring a very fragile vase to a man in Battahl. Of course you could try carrying it, but chances are it will break long before you even get close to there, so the easiest way is to just bring the man to the vase, that you can do by using a ferrystone. But this meant we had now completed all of her riddles and we unlocked the trophy full marks. However, we wasn't done with the Sphinx just yet. We now needed to kill her in order to get our hands on something known as the Eternal Wakestone. Basically an item that allows us to essentially revive an entire city should everyone within it die, but we needed this item specifically for another trophy later. So with that I initiated combat with the Sphinx and used the arrow of unmaking on her to kill her and get my hands on the Wakestone. Anyway, with the Sphinx now finally finished and out of the way, let's move on to all of the miscellaneous trophies I went for after this, starting with using the Eternal Wakestone at a morgue to knock out 2 trophies. The Reaper's Scorn trophy got by accomplishing a miracle for several people at once. Basically, use the Eternal Wakestone to revive 2 or more people that had died at the same time. And because it counts as a Wakestone, I also got the Savior trophy for using a Wakestone to revive someone. I also made a backup save before doing those 2 trophies, which I then re-downloaded, mainly because there is a much better uses for the Eternal Wakestone, like if my pawn contracts Dragon's Plague and then turns into a dragon and kills the whole city, I can then just use that Wakestone to revive everyone, and also because it would allow me to get another trophy for using a single Wakestone to revive someone at a morgue. I assumed that the Eternal Wakestone would have done this, but apparently you have to actually interact with someone's dead body inside the morgue for the trophy to pop. I then changed to the Thief vocation, equipped my weakest weapon and headed over to a cave near Dragon's Breath Tower. The reason for this is we had a Medusa to kill, but we had to do it by cutting off her head, and we had to do it before we had fully depleted 2 of her health bars. Thankfully she respawned, so if I didn't get it the first time I could just sleep at my house for a week and then come back and then try again, but luckily I didn't have to, as I was able to cut off her head first time, nabbing the trophy off with its head, and because we managed to cut it off before fully depleting 2 of her health bars, we also got the trophy getting ahead for acquiring a preserved Medusa head, which we then took back to our home and stashed it away so it didn't decay, and I then rested for a week, took the head back to Medusa, thankfully made a hell of a lot quicker thanks to a port crystal I placed down in front of her cave, and used her own head against her, petrifying and turning her to stone, unlocking a 3rd trophy, an eye for an eye. I then used a harpy snare beacon to summon a harpy, and I then grabbed onto its little feetsies where it started flying away with me, nabbing me the trophy Harpy Joyride. I then travelled to Vernworth, picked up some flowers and started handing them out to 2 NPCs over the course of a few days. This will then build up their affinity towards me, and now whenever I'm in town they will follow me around. Well, taking them back to my house will cause them to start fighting, and this nabs us the trophy, plenty Arisen to go round. Come on, we should get the trophy. There we go, plenty of Arisen to go round. Oh, and the fighting has begun. Oh, she's just got hit 3 times. She's down 4 times. Come on, you gonna hit her back? No, they're chilling, they're chilling. Oh, no, 5 times. Oh, and she is on the floor. She is down and out, but no, she gets back up. She's recovered. She misses her slap. She gets slapped another 2 times. This is a slaughter. I feel so bad for her right now. Oh my god. That's it. She's gone. She's gone. And finally, before taking on my next long-winded trophy, I taught my pawn a specialization thanks to a scroll I was rewarded with earlier in the game, nabbing the trophy a pawn of many talents. And then I went over to a rift stone and set a quest for other players to do while using my pawn, which nabbed the trophy Wish Upon the Rift. From here, I then decided to now get a massive undertaking out of the way, and that was to collect 80 Seeker tokens for the collector trophy. Now, as I said earlier, the Seeker tokens, bar the Sphinx side quest, have no connection to side quests or main quests and only offer rewards for turning in set amounts. There's a total of 240 spread across the entire in-game world, but by the grace of God, we thankfully only need 80. Now, I thought seeing as this is like a third of the entire amount, this would take me no time at all, but boy oh boy, I was wrong about that, just like I was wrong about your mum being a cyclops, because again, she's more like a troll. This process took hours and it was very tedious. The main reason being is fast travel in this game is very limited, so you pretty much have to walk everywhere to get them. And I'll be completely honest here, I just found a video guide online that showed the locations of each and every single one, and thankfully for the most part they were in order, so I just started at the very top of the map and followed the guide to get them all. Not going to say much more about it. I hated having to collect them, but then again I probably would have actually offed myself if I needed to collect all of them, so here's the trophy. And then after collecting all of them, I decided to treat myself by getting a much easier trophy out of the way, and all we had to do was cook each type of meat during the day and during the night. Well, at least that's what the trophy says. I ended up getting the trophy early because I know for a fact there was a few different meats I hadn't cooked yet, but regardless, I'm not going to complain, and after cooking a few meats, I got the trophy Barbecue Meister. I then decided to head down to the bottom portion of the map, which is called the Volcanic Island, as that's where the last two vocations and Meister skills could be picked up, and to get there we have to pass through some ruined cave-like structure called Drabnir's Grotto, and we actually got a trophy for reaching the location itself. And then once we left Drabnir's Grotto and walked up the hill, I got another trophy for reaching the Volcanic Island. From here I was then greeted by a dwarf that I helped get home because he had severe back pain, and then had to take him to a camp located further into Volcanic Island so that he could soak in the volcanic hot springs. And his wife was so thankful that we helped him that she revealed that she was actually an archer, but not just any kind, she was a magic archer, and so rewarded us with teaching us the vocation and giving us her Meister skill. At the hot springs I also ran into a man that had an extreme liking for alcohol and rotten eggs. Well, I think he liked the eggs, but now I'm not too sure because he kept giving them to me and I ended up walking away with like 20 of them. But he did love his alcohol though, and he requested alcohol known as Newt Liquor, which can either be bought from a secret merchant or crafted by combining fruit wine and saurian tails. Luckily the internet saved me another journey here, as I made sure to bring 3 of these bad boys with me on my trip, and upon giving them to him, he reveals that he was also once an Arisen but now prefers the quiet life, but as a thanks he teaches us one of the best vocations in the game and gives us his Meister skill. And this vocation is called the Warfarer, which essentially allows you to equip any weapon and any piece of armor from any vocation, as well as allows you to use all of the other vocation skills in this one vocation. Pretty damn overpowered, and I ended up using this vocation throughout the remainder of the game. Before being able to learn all of the skills though for the trophy, I first needed to actually purchase all of the vocations using discipline, but before I did that I made sure to take a little dip in the hot springs myself, which manages to nab me another trophy. And then of course I went to the local vocation guy, purchased the remaining vocations, which earned me a total of 3 more trophies, and then I learned all of the Meister skills for those vocations, earning me the trophy Master of the Meisters. From here I then got another kind of long-winded trophy out of the way that had me discovering a total of 50 locations. Now the thing is, it says locations, but what it actually means are caves, and it's not as simple as walking close enough to have them marked on your map. You have to actually go inside of them. So from here I spent a couple of hours visiting new caves thanks to the help of an interactive map, and revisiting caves I already had marked on my map. Now I was only missing like 20 locations at this point, but because I wasn't entirely sure what caves I had and hadn't entered, I just played it safe and revisited as many as I could. Eventually though I did visit my 50th location, earning the trophy The Tourist, and because I was so close to Vernworth I headed back there to get another trophy out of the way, and that was for earning the affections of 50 people. Now I already had like 38 out of 50 by this point just from completing nearly every side quest, but apparently even doing all of them isn't enough to earn this trophy, and so I made a backup save and walked around Vernworth giving people gifts until I got the trophy to pop. And the reason why I made a backup save is because I don't want to visit my home and have people slapping the living daylights out of each other every time I try and get some sleep. And for my last trophy, before I finally decided to continue on with the main quest line, I made my way around the map hunting down and killing cyclopses until I killed a total of 30 of them, which then earned a badge for my pawn and unlocked the trophy, a badge of honor. Anyway, finally continuing on with the main quest, I made my way over to the Battahl coast and found the man called Ambrosius. He tells us that he is currently looking for large blue crystal shards to refine them into making a godsway to command the pawns, and suggests talking to either the Oracle or the nearby Dragonforged for more information on the crystal's locations. The Dragonforged basically tells us he has no idea of what the godsway is, but does say that Lord Phasis had come to him some time ago seeking knowledge on how to change the will of the world through mortal means, and suggests that maybe this is what the godsway is used for. While realistically he was no help in our investigation into the godsway, he was a massive help in obtaining my 4th upgrade for a weapon that can only be obtained by giving him 15 worms life crystals, which you get from killing dragons, and in doing so it gave my weapon a massive damage increase as well as giving me the trophy Dragonforged. So now it was time to go and see the Oracle to see what information she could give me, but because I am a trophy fiend, I decided to get one more trophy out of the way. And I went in search of a Dullahan, which is just a fancy name for a headless horseman, and that's because we get a trophy for killing one. I tried a few different possible spawn locations for the Dullahan, and to make it harder, it only spawns during the night, so I could barely see where I was going. And not only does it only spawn at night, but it also only spawns close to sunrise, so you have a limited window to actually kill this thing. Didn't have much luck at a lot of these locations, but there was one location right at the top of the map near the start of the game that I went to, and my first attempt at getting it to spawn here actually worked, and of course taking the Dullahan down nabbed me the trophy before dawn breaks. But finally, pretty much every side quest bar a couple endgame side quests have now been completed, and nearly every single non-story related trophy had been obtained, so with nothing else really left to do, it was time to just finally crack on with the main story. We give the Oracle a visit and she tells us that she doesn't know much about the godsway, but apparently there is an old man who used to be dragon forged in Harv village, and maybe he can tell us more, so we head to the village to talk to the man. He tells us that there is actually a sunken temple in the middle of the sea, and that there was a man who was once tasked with looking over our world who now resides there. After telling us his, let's be honest, quite unbelievable story, no word of a lie, a massive structure starts to emerge from the water and a path towards it opens up in the caves below the village, and so of course this piques our interest and we go to investigate. This path ends up taking us to the seafloor shrine where we come across a ghostly figure. This apparition tells us that his name is Rothai and that he was once an Arisen who actually founded the country of Vermund. He also talks of someone known as the Watching One, but I'm not actually sure who this is, and my best guess is that he's referring to the Pathfinder who has spoken to us a couple of times throughout the story. We tell Rothai that we are looking for information on the godsway, and he tells us that the crystals used to make the godsway are actually fragmented souls of previous Arisens. He also knows that the Battahl are the ones seeking to use these crystals for nefarious means, but much like nearly every other person in this game so far, he doesn't know why. But he does know that we are destined for greatness, and so gives us his own soul in the form of a blade called the Godsbane, although we would actually need help from the Battahl in order to restore the power the blade once contained. And then we get a creepy cutscene of some weird looking face staring at us, which I can't lie, I assumed meant I was about to take on a boss, but apparently not. We are free to leave the shrine without a boss fight, and so head to the magic research lab in Battahl to speak to Ambrosius about restoring the Godsbane. He tells us that he would be able to restore the Godsbane's power by bringing him 15 worms life crystals, but he also only told us this under the impression that he would be keeping it to create another godsway. And so because this marks the true point of no return, I made one final backup save in case anything going forward went wrong. So from here I gave him 15 worms life crystals I'd picked up from all my time slaying dragons and gave them to him so he could restore the blade, and the very next day I returned to find out that my boy had absolutely cooked with this one. He was gassed and couldn't wait to get it to Lord Phasis. That was until the Pathfinder came along and used his magic to convince him to give it to us instead. Now we had to catch up with Lord Phasis, who was currently on his way to Moonlight Tower, and with the power of the Godsbane we were able to open up that mysterious magical door in Battahl and take a shortcut to Volcanic Island. On our way there we also witnessed the weird creepy face thing we saw down in the seafloor shrine rise up out of the water. This motherfudger was a giant. I guess you could say he was gigantus. Yeah, I know it was a bad joke, but I don't care. It segues us into our next trophy, which had us taking down Gigantus in a short amount of time. Now, in actual truth, we have a decent amount of time to take him down in, but to ensure we got the Missable trophy tied to this guy, we just used an unmaking arrow that I bought from the Dragon Forged earlier for 8 worms life crystals. This destroyed all of the crystals attached to his body, and after waiting like almost 10 minutes for him to make the journey to the Volcanic Island camp, he falls down to his knees and seemingly deactivates. But this does earn us the trophy Gigantus, I hardly knew ya. for defeating him in a short space of time. And because we took him down quickly, we would also be able to get another trophy tied to this guy a little bit later. Anyway, speeding things up, we find out Phasis has already made it to Moonlight Tower, and so we head inside to catch up to him, along the way running into Ragnar. You won't know him because I haven't mentioned him, but we have done a couple of side quests with him in the past, and he seemed like a pretty nice guy. Well, now he wanted to fight us, but I didn't want to kill him, and so just started to wear down his health and eventually started picking him up to keep him alive for a secret little ending to his questline and access to the top of the tower. Once at the top of the tower, we kill the false Arisen and watch Phasis summon a dragon, before a much bigger dragon comes in, splattering the other dragon in the process. This is the same douchebag who took our heart at the beginning of the game, and we wanted it back. He does give us a choice though. Let him eat our elf friend and he will disappear and allow us to rule over the world, or kill him and we will still get to rule over this world anyway. Now I can't lie, the first choice was tempting because it wasn't Ulrika or Wilhelmina in his hands, but you know what, the elf was a pretty good guy and so we chose to fight him. He then takes us on some like long ass flight to the arena that we are to fight him in, and then from here we jump on his head and absolutely demolish his health bar. Can't lie, I expected this almighty dragon, the destroyer of Arisens, to be a pain in the arse, but this was honestly easier than a normal dragon fight. I actually can't lie. Anyway, we take him down and then get to take our place on the throne to rule Vermund for the foreseeable future. And after a lengthy amount of time just sitting there staring at the throne, the game ends and we earn our first ending trophy, Peace, for getting the good ending and becoming the Sovereign of Vernworth. And with our first ending and ending related trophy out of the way, it was now time to tackle our second ending, that being the game's true ending. Now thankfully we don't have to reload our backup save. Instead, if we just reload our normal save, we are taken to the end of the game where we take our place on the throne. However, if we talk to the Pathfinder here, we are eventually given the option to take a different route and, as the game has told us many times before, alter the course of the Rivers of Fate. This then takes us back to the flight on top of the dragon, only this time, rather than waiting to reach the arena, we climb down to the dragon's heart and use the Godsbane sword on ourselves, causing the heart inside the dragon to burst open, killing the dragon, sending us both plummeting down into the sea below. The brine doesn't seem to kill us though, and instead we awaken in front of the Pathfinder. He offers us one last chance to change our mind, but to his disappointment we decline and are instead, in his words, sent to a world bereft of the benevolent hand that guides it. And when we awaken, we get another title screen and we get our first trophy of the Unmoored World. Yes, as I said, this is the Unmoored World, a world underneath the sea that is being devoured by the brine and that was once Grancis, and there's actually remains of this as we can actually find the ruins of Gran Soren from the first game. The Pathfinder tells us that very soon this world will cease to exist and that we should explore this world and not waste our final moments. Obviously we don't plan on allowing this world to be destroyed, and so we set out to find a way to stop it. But first we take a quick trip over to Battahl, where not only do we find Phasis licking his wounds, but we also find our pawn who had been missing since our flight on the dragon. We also tell Phasis that we had been speaking to the Pathfinder, but he refers to him as the World Forged, although he has no idea why he's here or what he wants, but I guess we're friends now, so yeah. Anyway, from here we take our pawn and travel across the surface beneath what was once the sea until we reach the ruins of Gran Soren. Here we find Rothai and he tells us that he had once attempted what we are attempting now, however with very little luck, but he believes in us, and so with his last bit of energy he has left, he summons the Oracle, the Dragon Forged, and for some reason Sigurd to come and aid us. The Oracle tells us that we need to help the people of the Unmoored World and that we should bring them to the Seafloor Shrine, as it may be our only hope of escaping the world's upcoming destruction. From here we now have to make our way to 5 different locations around the map, opening up the weird portals in the sky and killing the brine dragon monster things that come out of them in an attempt to put an end to the brine and stop the world's destruction, and while doing this helping the cities and settlements evacuate the civilians to the Seafloor Shrine. But before doing that we take some of our hard-earned Worm's Life crystals and purchase the Dragons Dogma sword from the Dragon Forged, earning the trophy Dragons Dogma. Now from here the rest of the trophies in the Unmoored World are technically missable. I say technically because if we spend over a certain amount of days here without clearing the trials and saving the civilians, we won't be able to stop the apocalypse. However, if we do take too long here, we can just die, where we are given the option of returning to the start of the Unmoored World to try everything again. Seeing as we were on a time limit, I wasted absolutely no time and started making my way to each location. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but essentially to evacuate the civilians in each city we have to first help them with some tasks. Tasks that are made easier seeing as I'd completed every other side quest in the game. If I hadn't have completed some of these side quests, convincing the people to evacuate can cause us to have to skip forward a few days. I'm looking at you, elven people. I'm looking at you. But thankfully, we didn't have that issue. And when it comes to dealing with the trials, it's like I said earlier, all we have to do is open up the different portals at each of these cities and settlements and kill the brine dragon monster things. None of them are overly hard to deal with, so again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Thankfully for one of them, because we had taken down Gigantus earlier, we can actually use him to deal with 2 different dragons that come from these portals. This is because our pawn ends up getting sucked into Gigantus and I assume takes over his body to fight them. A pretty cool little fight sequence, and the best part is I didn't even have to do anything but stand there and watch them, and we even get a trophy for doing so. And then obviously after killing all of the brine dragons and evacuating all of the people in time, we get both the guardian and the hero trophies. From here we notice another portal had opened up at the seafloor shrine, and for the final time we use the godsbane to open it. This time the pathfinder, or either watching one, whatever he actually is, brings back the big boy dragon from earlier. At this point our pawn then ends up turning into some black gooey dragon thing that I can't lie sounds and looks like it's in an immense amount of pain. Master. Anyway, she gives us a lift up to the big boy and together we take him down.
Arisen. I am no longer a mere vessel. Your great will has imbued me with a lesser will of my own. Will is power. 'Tis the means to shape the world as one desires.
Oblivion fades. This tale's end has been unwritten. My heart, it aches. A new world comes. A new tale is set to unfold. Yet, it seems I will not be there to watch it.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the game. We died, our pawn died, the dragon died, but in the process we had managed to bring an end to the cycle. The brine retreats back into the depths of the sea, seemingly not to be seen again at least for some time. The people we had saved go back about their lives, rebuilding what has been lost, and all in all, it's a pretty happy ending for everyone. Well, not for us because we died, but you get my point. The cycle has finally ended, the world has been saved, and we earn our final trophy and the game's platinum. And with that being the platinum trophy, this brings us to the end of the video and to the end of, quite frankly, a phenomenal game. I actually had so much fun playing through this game, and it genuinely blew me away with just how much this game has. The story, I can't lie, can be a little bit confusing, but that doesn't make it any less enjoyable. The basic premise of the game story is that everything that happens is essentially part of a cycle. This has all happened before, and whoever is chosen to hold the mantle of the Arisen has the job of ensuring his world isn't brought to complete destruction, and then sometime in the future it will repeat and all happen again. The environments and locations are absolutely phenomenal. Some of the views you can have in this game are downright gorgeous, and the cities and towns you get to visit are all distinctly different and amazing to explore. The combat is extremely enjoyable. I honestly couldn't get enough of it. The different abilities you have, the fact that you can literally climb onto different creatures and monsters to attack their weak spots, it all just combines together so nicely. Don't get me wrong, it got annoying sometimes having to fight group after group of enemies nearly every 30 seconds, but it always felt satisfying when you come out victorious. There is so much I could say about what I enjoyed about this game, but it's been a long video and I don't want to make this longer than it already is. Overall, for a game that has a hell of a lot of missables that trophy and achievement hunters usually kind of detest, it really wasn't too bad to get them all, and all in all I had an absolutely amazing time playing through this game. So much so that along with completing every single side quest and earning every single trophy, I then started playing through a good majority of the game again before I even started to make this video. I think this is a game that anyone who enjoys open world RPGs should 100% play through, and definitely consider going for that platinum trophy. And also the 100% because it genuinely just is amazing. But don't worry, I will not judge you if you don't get all the Seekers tokens, because I didn't either. Although as I said, I am playing through it again, so my plan is to then go and clean up all of the Seekers tokens during that playthrough. But anyway guys, this brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, then if you could hit that like button and share this video around, it would be very much appreciated. Make sure to leave your thoughts of this game and any suggestions down in the comments below. Also, have you guys played Dragons Dogma 1? I personally loved it. Let me know what you think of that and any kind of similarities you have noticed between the two. I love reading the comments and try to reply to absolutely as many as I can. And if you haven't already, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on to stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.